And here we are at the In Favor Spotlight with Dale Shafer. He is a financial advisor with Affinity. There's more to that, right? Financial advisor with
Affinity Wealth Advisory Group.
that guy, right? So you manage money.
Well, that's what everyone thinks I do, yes.
Okay. So what do you do?
That is a wonderful question because, of course, money is an important ingredient, I should say. If I could, okay. Money is an important ingredient. However, it's not the secret sauce. The secret sauce that I use, or that I do, if you will, in this case, is helping people define and understand what's really most important and what their relationship is to money, and then how we use that to figure out what it is that they want for themselves. That is, in essence, what financial planning is all about. It's a work that's never done, which is my favorite part of the work that I do.
Interesting. So I've got this interesting question. I'm looking at the screen that's behind you, and it's blank.
Yeah.
And it makes me think that, I've got this green screen and I got all branded for In Favor and for you with your picture and Infinity. And I think about people who have money in the bank, in a savings account. And it's probably just as underutilized as that screen behind you.
Probably. Yeah. That screen behind me does serve a purpose. So, back in the day when we met with people face to face, right? Remember the good old days? When someone is here in my office, that screen turns on and everything that we're talking about or that we're working on together, or if there's something that I want them to see, rather than turning my little laptop around, I project it onto that screen so they can see it in big format, so they can actually read what's there and it connects. A great way to have visual.
You're such a literal guy. You take everything that I say literally. I thought that was like a softball for you to talk about money in the bank versus investing.
Well, so I can go there next.
Okay, go there.
One thing at a time. When you're a planner, you just go, what's the big rock? Then what's the big rock? Then what's the big rock? So money in the bank is an interesting question, because what that looks like and how much money should be there. And I do believe that there should be money in the bank pretty much at all times. An emergency fund is vital. But how much should be there will vary from person to person.
So it's important to have liquidity, but at the same time, you don't want it not working for you.
Yes, there's a point where for most of my clients, we have a target number or percentage. And once we hit that target number, anything above that gets put to work.
Okay. So let's, without getting into specific numbers, although you can share whatever it is that you want to share, who are you working with? In other words, is it a husband and a wife? Is it employees at an organization? Is it individuals married or not married? Tell me about that.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I have, in theory, who the ideal person is that I want to work with. And the people I really like to work with are small business owners, because they tend to have a lot going on. And a lot going on means we have a lot to talk about. If I pull that down a step closer, it looks like people who are generally in their 40s and 50s. They are doing their day-to-day stuff. They're trying to earn a living. They're trying to be attractive to their clients. They're trying to keep the business open these days. They're coming up with new ways to solve new challenges in the market. They are putting their kids through probably high school at this point and thinking, how in the world are we going to pay for college? Because last year the tuition was this, and this year it's this, and next year they're saying it's going to be this. Mm-hmm. also have mom and dad who are in their 70s, and what's that? Are we going to have to take care of and help pay for their medical costs? What we don't even know what they have, if they have anything put together, right? So they're trying to solve questions and problems on both ends of them, both sides of, you know, the generation they created and the generation that created them. But they're also saying, how do we do all of that, but make sure we don't get lost in what we've been saving and wanting for ourselves when we have the opportunity to step back and transition from I have to go do this today to I want to go do this today. And hopefully, you know, it's that whole thing. If you love what you do, you never work a day in your life.
Mhm.
That's where people are, but there is a transition between I have to go do what I love every day, or the bills don't get paid, to I know that we now have enough saved so we can just do what we want. Maybe that means continuing working and maybe it doesn't.
Interesting. Okay, so this whole package here, I'm assuming it's different for different people. So your approach is you got one widget and it works for everybody, or is it personalized for this is a married couple, this is a business owner, this is single with kids, that kind of thing?
Yeah, every one of my clients have completely different needs. So there's really no way to just have a one widget or a one approach. The only thing that's consistent is the advisor in the approach. The needs change. So a married couple will have different needs than probably about a third of my business, which are single females. They're going to have different needs. And inside of each of those groups, they're all going to have different needs. And so, you know, some of them are business owners, some of them are employees, some of them have children, some of them do not. Some of them are late in life and they're getting married again. Some of them are widows or widowers. And everybody has their own level of complexities. And so there's no just one box for, you know, plug and play for everybody.
Mhm. I like that plug and play. Careful, you're getting the gamers in on the conversation here. Um, so let's talk about somebody who works for an organization that has some financial services in the package for their employment. So it may be through a third party or it's some process where they're going to put in a certain amount and the company adds another amount or matches a percentage. What's the advantage to going that route versus going with you?
Yeah, I don't think that's an either or proposition. For a lot of people who are employed and they have benefits that include a 401k or a 403b or some other retirement savings, depending on how the organization is structured, it makes sense, especially if there's an employer match, to save there. And in addition, for a lot of people, from a tax standpoint, it makes sense to save in those accounts because that's all pre-tax money. So later there's a different tax benefit. And in the current year, there's a current tax benefit because it reduces the amount of income that you get taxed on. There are a lot of those kinds of services that will have some sort of an advisor, especially if it's a bigger company or they're attached to a bigger 401k provider. And those providers will usually have some name on your statement that's a financial advisor, and you can call. And in my experience, and this isn't universally true, but in my experience, when you call that number and you speak to that individual, they know the plan, they know the funds or the investments that are offered in the plan, and they can tell you which ones they think are good or which ones are working. What they typically don't know is what's happening in the rest of your life. And one of the things that get missed by a lot of advisors who just focus on the investments is everything else that's happening. And it kind of goes back to what I said earlier, where money is a key ingredient, but it's not the secret sauce. And so when you're saving for your retirement, there's a whole bunch of other stuff that comes into play. And that's where the difference between just being an investment advisor versus being a professional financial advisor comes into play.
Wow, a great distinction. It's got me thinking. So you're on the right track. Now let's
Good.
talk about some business owners. They've got themselves a business and they don't have any employees. We'll escalate. So we're just talking about the sole proprietor. They should be investing in things other than their actual business.
I think so, because at some point the business, I think when you start a business, the kind of like long range thing that we look at is creating something that will then be worth something to somebody else so you can sell it and ride off into the sunset, whatever that looks like when you ride off to the sunset, right? That looks different for everybody, what that's going to mean, how that's going to look, whatever. Along the way, what we never know is when you're ready to sell the business is what the business will be worth at the time. We never know who's going to come along. We never know how that's going to get negotiated. We never know what kind of market we're going to be in. We never know if your current business is even going to be viable in 10 years. There may be a completely different subset of things that you need to do to stay relevant in the marketplace. So
I'm sorry. I just wanted to jump in and say I'll use candles and light bulbs as the perfect example. And the speed at which technology is changing, never mind COVID and everything else, just by change alone, what you do now and the business you create now may not be a viable business. And that's what you're referring to, correct?
Correct. And so along the way, it makes sense to use some of the revenue that's generated from the business with the help of your financial advisor and your tax professional, create ways for you to save that are of benefit to the business from both a tax standpoint and for you, the owner, as a savings standpoint. I'm a big advocate for figuring out ways to do that. And it's a lot of fun to help people realize that they can still make the going concern work while also making their personal going concern work better.
You know, I have a curious question with a story behind it, and I hope you'll be able to answer me. It's a little bit of a sidebar. We have this expression in the event industry that the DJ at the wedding thinks it's a dance party, and the caterer thinks it's a formal dinner. The photographer thinks it's a formal photo shoot. So they all come to the same event with a different perspective as to what this is about. When you're helping, whether it's an individual or a business owner, and you're coordinating with their tax representative and maybe some other, maybe insurance people, who's the conductor and who's putting this all together? Or do you think it's the financial planner who really should drive the vehicle?
That is an amazing question, and it is difficult to answer because there are some times where, as the advisor, there's a lot of really bad analogies in my profession. I really, sidebar, try not to use the word industry, financial services industry, because I'm one of the many people across the country who are working very hard to take the word industry and turn it into a profession, because we are professionals, and so we should be recognized, and we should recognize ourselves as such and not industry. Anyway, semantics. Regardless, there are times where as an advisor, I want to turn control over to the CPA and let them drive the bus, because there is something that I know that we need to accomplish for the client, but the CPA is the one who has that sheet of music written on your conductor.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there are times where I need to be the one that is moving things forward and, bringing in the horns and the cellos and whatever else is in there. There are times where I happily turn that over to the client, because really what's most important is what is most important to them. And so there's times where they're conducting by telling me what's most important, and then I will conduct by explaining how we do that. The really bad analogy that's in my profession is we're going to be your financial quarterback, right? There's a lot of sports analogies that get thrown around, and quite honestly, for some of my female clients, financial quarterback, that means nothing to them.
Hmm.
Why in the world would I even say that? So I try to do, things where it's not push, pull, or control and concession. It's really just there's a fluidity that happens in the relationship, and whoever needs to be moving us forward at that time, I think it's incumbent upon me to help all of us in the room know who that person is and to be able to yield when it's not my turn to make a noise.
So in terms of yielding, if you're working with somebody and they don't have a CPA or some of the other pieces in the orchestra, you can bring those people into the party.
Oh, absolutely. And it's a vital part, especially if you're a business owner or if you are a high income earner. And high income for a lot of people can be anything north of $60,000 as an example. So we're not talking about necessarily only six-figure individuals. There are people who earn about the median wage or just higher who need help, and they need a tax professional because the do-it-yourself tax service or
TurboTax.
yeah, like the kind of go to the grocery store or the mall and
Hmm.
take some of those services. There reaches a point where that's not the kind of help and advice that you need in that area.
And if they already have somebody, are you willing to play along with who they have?
I prefer to, because they're going to have a history of the work that they've done with that individual and why. And that history is incredibly valuable to me as an advisor, because what I don't want to do is invalidate the work that someone else has done by being a new kid in town.
Sounds like, and again, sports analogy, but it sounds like you're a good team player, which I think is important. Okay, so we've done the sidecar, the sidebar, and now we're going to move on. So now we've got a business owner and they have 2 or 3 employees. Are you helping just the business owner? Is there a conflict of interest like an attorney if you help the employees? How does that work?
That is also a great question. I would prefer the opportunity to, in some way or another, work with the employees. And the reason why is because there's been a lot of research conducted on productivity in the workplace. And for a lot of people, if they have unsolved financial questions, there's something like, it's like 3 to 5 hours of production a week. And if you're lucky, it's only 3 to 5 hours a week as a business owner where that employee is lost. They're thinking about the thing over here they can't solve, or they're having to call in sick to handle personal matters, or they're just not productive, they're not engaged. And it's not that the problem is that they're not productive or engaged. The thing is that as a business owner, you have an opportunity to help that person live their best lives while they're in your company. I can be an advisor that can come in, even if I come in as a service to the business and I do 2 or 3 little financial seminars in a year where I just help people understand basic concepts and I can be available to answer questions. Well, then I become like the advisor, the dedicated advisor for the business. And if I can help your employees live their better lives, then we start talking about, as a business, as a company of people, how do we collectively take this thing to the next level versus how do we collectively make sure that I can get another raise next year? The conversation changes from, hey, I need a raise, to let me as the employee help you figure out a way to earn more business, client satisfaction, revenue, whatever it is, and create a way to share that. And there's a different in the mentality there.
Mm-hmm.
If I can help be a part of that shift, I love that. That's awesome.
Sounds like that's the place we want to start sending referrals your way. Small businesses with 3 to 5, 10 employees, because you can actually benefit lives that way. And I hear that there's a passion behind that piece of the puzzle.
Yeah, and before I was an advisor, I ran a business that had about 15, 16 employees. And so I understand very well the famine or feast of running a small business. I understand I can't take a paycheck for the next 2 or 3 weeks because I have to make sure that person feeds their family and that they can clock some hours. So I understand that full and well, and I understand what it takes to be to create the kind of culture where you can open the books to the employees and say, listen, here's how this actually works. And that's why when we bring in new business, we can't just take that new business and go buy whatever the new thing is that we think we need or that we want or whatever. In my case, it was a small construction company. So it was always a tool or a truck or something like that. But when you can help people understand how everything pulls together and how, any situations where there's a service opportunity or a warranty issue or someone's not happy and it takes more money to resolve the issue, that takes away from the fuel that's pushing everybody forward to the next better level for the business. So yes, there's a passion, but it's a passion because I've done it.
Mhm. I love this. Let me wrap this up, if I may. You're a financial advisor. What's your best, and I'm not talking about what stock to buy, but what is your best suggestion? I don't want to say tip, your best suggestion for somebody to get started?
The very first thing I recommend is the very first investment you can make is in yourself. So, right. I mean, it seems like the obvious thing, but if you stop and that's a large part of the work I do. So when I first meet someone, before I have them fill out the sheet where they, tell me where everything is and what it's worth and how long they've owned it, and before all of that happens, I stop that part of the process because that's what everyone expects. You get from a financial advisor. You want to meet with me? Great. I'm going to send you a thing, fill it out and bring it in completed to my office so I can look through it and make you feel really awkward. Before all that happens, I start by defining the two things I mentioned earlier, which is, what's your relationship to money? What about money is important to you? And then what do you want for yourself? And so those two questions establish values and they help me understand your investment in yourself. And then once we understand all of that, we can get to what's next for you. And sometimes a great way to get started is to establish an emergency fund. A great way to get started is to start contributing to your company's retirement plan, especially if there's a match. Sometimes the best way to get started is just to put everything on the table or on a sheet of paper and just figure out what's the next thing that we can cross off. For some people, the best way to get started is to work through the process of grief that requires you to now take a different step, which is why we're talking. It really varies. So it's hard to say the best step for everyone to take is this, other than start with yourself.
Interesting. Well, this has been really informative and, dare I say, fun, because I find finance to be fun. Thank you for spending a few minutes. Oh, you too? Look at that.
And occasionally the fun looks like this, Scott.
Oh,
so
see, look at that. Steal my spin. Too fun. Thank you so much for taking the time to spend with us today, Dale.
Thank you, my friend. Appreciate it.